Hi, welcome to Queer View Mirror, a show about queer people, by queer people, for queer people, and our allies. I'm Scott.
And I am Dawn. And I would like to acknowledge at this point that we are coming to you from the unceded territories of the Shot and Hupashazit people where we live, love, and play. I can't wait to get into the interview today, but before that, I have to ask my co-host Scott, why is he dressed up this way today?
Oh, because I just came from a wedding.
A wedding?
I did.
A gay
love
wedding?
a wedding. No, actually,
Okay.
it wasn't. There were a lot of gay people there, though.
Okay.
My beautiful friends Josh and Katie got married after 3 years, and Josh is an RCMP constable, and Katie's in nursing, and they just had a beautiful beach wedding. Yeah, it was spectacular.
Well, you know, as gays, whether straight or not, or gay or wedding, whatever, we always love a love story. And today we're going to be talking about a different kind of love story.
That's right. These are two people that made an analogy during a conversation that they were like opposing generals on a battlefield. And, you know, I love a story about building bridges and making peace, and that's exactly what these two did.
Oh, yeah, like talk about, like what we always say, it's about queer people, by queer people, for queer people, and our allies. And today we're interviewing these two special people who have formed a very unique alliance. It's like oil and water shouldn't mix, but they did somehow.
Why don't we go to the interview?
Let's do it. All right, we'd like to welcome on the show today James Taves and E.T. Turner. And they're going to be telling us about their story, how they became good allies in the queer community. But of course, Scott has something to say before we do anything else.
No, I think we should just jump right in. E.T.
Okay.
James, why don't you tell us about yourselves?
All right. Well, we'll jump right in then too.
All righty.
Our story, the storyline began 100 years ago.
Okay.
And,
You don't look that old.
well, there you go. Got the story.
You don't look a day over 100.
And in 1914, the World War I was going. At Christmas time, one soldier from either side got out of the trenches, and they met in no man's land. And it's a very famous story. It's much bigger than what I just told you here. It's called the Christmas Truce. And for one day, the war stopped. And that's the backstory for what E.T. and I are doing. We were in the middle of a war, and E.T. is going to tell you a little bit more about that. But we decided to meet in no man's land and start talking.
Okay, that's what happened. We actually, it started with LeaderCast in 2014, and that was something that divided the community in Nanaimo. It was sponsored by Chick-fil-A, which is a well-known anti-gay company in the U.S. primarily. But when I saw that there was going to be a conference put on by Chick-fil-A in the convention center here in Nanaimo, that sort of grabbed me because I had been a gay activist for many years and was certainly familiar with Chick-fil-A. One of the city council people that I knew put forward a motion to cancel the LeaderCast. And this had the result of inflaming the Christian community, and primarily the evangelical Christian community. They became really up in arms about it and were accusing council of being anti-Christian and that Christians couldn't use city facilities. It got really blown out of proportion. In fact, Ezra Levant, who I think a lot of people are familiar with, Ezra Levant, came to Nanaimo and did his show from Nanaimo and confronted one of the council members, the one that had introduced the motion. It got really nasty. So I was then asked, probably a couple of months later, I think it was December of 2014, if I would meet with an evangelical minister. And my reaction was, why? I have nothing to say to them. But this person was persistent, and I actually finally agreed to meet James I told him I didn't think we should meet in public because I would probably get really angry and I didn't want to make a scene. So we actually met.
Where's the fun in that?
I know, who would want to do that? So we actually met in his office at at his church, which is the neighborhood church in the north end of Nanaimo. So we met and we started talking, and I told him, I kind of unloaded and just told him exactly how I was feeling about what had happened. And he listened. He gave me some information about his own background and his family. And as a result, I was pleasantly surprised. He wasn't what I pictured or what I thought an evangelical minister would be like. He wasn't trying to convert me or do any of that stuff. So we just started meeting. We met, I think, another couple of times, and then I invited some queer folks to come join us, and then he invited some other ministers to come, and so we all started meeting, and we all started getting to know each other better, and I think that was really the key to good communication that was going on.
And from the backstory from my end was, as E.T. said, the leader cast cancellation lit people's hair on fire. And so I was part of the Evangelical Fellowship here in Nanaimo, and people were very, very upset. And so I said to them, well, what if we actually sit down with the gay community and talk it over and see what the deal is? Maybe this isn't as big a deal as we think it is. Mm-hmm. And I didn't get a very warm reception, but I got, oh, go knock yourself out. And so I did. And so that's out of that I contacted ET, and we started talking. And out of that, we did actually sit down with the ministers and with the gay activists in town and have a meeting that we began. And I think it's out of that the current group that we have goes and continues.
I see. So could you give us a little background of what LeaderCast was supposed to be all about? Because it did get canceled. And what was LeaderCast all about in the first place?
It's primarily, I think, directed toward the business community, and they had various speakers that would come and present, information at this conference. One of whom specifically had a history of doing conversion therapy.
Oh.
And so I was very, that really hooked me. And so some of the other speakers were just Christian, some were evangelical, some were not religiously connected. Mm-hmm. But this was sponsored by a company that was going to make money off of this conference, who then was going to turn around and continue donating money to anti-gay groups and anti-gay candidates. And they were very opposed to gay marriage, for one thing.
I see.
And you're an American, or were American, weren't you, E.T.?
Yeah, I have dual citizenship now.
Oh, well, welcome to Canada. I know you've been here for a while, and I say that with my tongue in my cheek, but so, you would have a better background of what Chick-fil-A does and the horrible impact it has on the queer community, much more so than we would. Was there anything in particular that happened in the past that kind of led you to that opinion?
Well, just when I was living in the U.S., just the ongoing stuff that they would do, that they would sponsor these candidates who were going to vote for anti-gay legislation. So they were definitely anti-gay, and they actually opened a restaurant in the Calgary airport, which some people were upset about, some people in the queer community, certainly in Calgary. Mm-hmm. But I heard that closed down, I don't know, several months ago, but there was some objection. They wanted to make an inroad into Canada because they're a big business in the US. and they wanted to expand into Canada.
One of the things that comes out quite quickly as you start these conversations is there's two different worlds that in some ways don't know that much about each other, except they know they're at war.
Yeah, they don't agree. They are in the opposite sides of the fence.
They're assuming that the other side is the enemy, and certainly within the world that I come from, within the evangelical world, there are definitely enemies of the gay community. That is very clear. But most people in the evangelical world actually aren't aware of anything.
I see.
So when a thing like LeaderCast shows up, suddenly this hits the awareness button. And I saw that as an opportunity for an actual substantive conversation to take place, to fill out awareness of the fact that there is a gay community and they have been enormously wounded by the church. And the story of the wounding by the church just repeats itself over and over and over again. Now, if you're not connected to that, and I got connected to that 2 years prior when a family member of ours moved in with us and came out. And so suddenly this wasn't just some abstract issue out there keeping the gays out of society. This was a family member who was part of our family and needed to be, and so that's where, from my end, my transformation took place.
And can we drill down into that a little bit? Prior to, I'm not sure what happened first, whether you met ET first or this family member moved in and came out.
The family member was first. It was 2 years ago.
The family member was first. So prior to that, what was your stand on the queer community, and what did it change? Like, what changed?
Well, prior to that, my stand was to be what I would consider to be a really open-minded person who is willing to talk to anybody and is really a nice person. And I didn't give it very specific thought. It was an issue that was arm's length. And
so in a sense, you were neutral.
Well, I didn't. Part of the backstory too is a very good friend of mine who was my editor at the time in Winnipeg. Her daughter came out, and she and I were talking, and I thought I was being really open-minded and nice about it, and I hurt her feelings very badly.
Oh.
And I didn't know why. I knew I did. When my nephew moved in, all of a sudden I got it, because I was treating this as a topic rather than a person.
Oh, I see.
And when it's a topic, you can say all kinds of things and throw things out there because it's a topic. You can't hurt a topic, but you can hurt people, and you do. And so that's where a transformation of thinking took place in me that is still ongoing, frankly. But the journey with ET is a very special part of that. And now I get to sit down with gay and queer people, and they're telling me their stories firsthand. And I go, oh my goodness, this is the case? That should not be the case. The church is supposed to be a sanctuary, and that means a safe place. And when a sanctuary isn't a safe place, that's a violation of its core identity.
Well, it's not so much church, it's religion.
Thank you for that.
Say again, I didn't hear that.
What does the evangelical church, do they have an official stand on queer people or the queer community?
Well, that's the part of the confusion with evangelical isn't actually a group. It's a label that covers a whole bunch of different people. So there are very open, affirming churches within evangelical world, and there are very closed. Now, I would say the majority are probably more conservative than liberal, but I am a centrist within my denomination. When I talk to people within mine, I'm a Mennonite Brethren pastor. And now the reality is most people are quite unaware of the issue. It's just something out there. When they start meeting gay people, and they, especially as family members, suddenly everything changes. And it should, frankly.
And I was just going to say that I think that the key to what's happened with James and I and our group that meets, and you know, everyone sitting down together, is that when before my thinking was it was us versus them. It was the queer community versus the Christians. And we didn't like each other. You know, I actually considered them to be enemies. So the problem is that once you get to know people, once you sit down with them and you talk to them, then it's harder to do that us versus them, because you start to find some common ground, and you find out, well, they're just people, or, you know, they're different kinds of people. And I found out there's all kinds of Christians, there's all kinds of evangelicals. Some of the, we had, I think, ministers from 3 or 4 different churches that were, there was Mennonite, of course, there was Church of Christ, there was Maranatha. They're under
Pentecostal.
the Pentecostal, and they're under the umbrella, but they're kind of separate entities. But familiarity in this case did not breed contempt. It brought some understanding and some ways to connect.
So I just want to backtrack a little bit. This leader cast thing that brought your attention to the issue, and like sort of like sounded the alarm, if I understand correctly. When was this? 2000 when?
That was 2014.
2014.
Summer,
So
spring of 2014.
Yeah.
Okay, so it has been an 8-year journey thus far.
Yeah.
So where do you think we are now?
Well, I think E.T. and I, using the metaphor that I started with of the 1914 war at Christmas truce, we've gone into no man's land. We're very conscious of it. And on both sides, there are people who don't think we should be where we are. And we occasionally get shots. But we've decided to set up camp in no man's land and to work at actually inviting people to join us. And that is, that's a journey. And it's risky. In the sad part of the 2014, or no, I'd say 1914 Christmas truce was the next day they went back to shooting each other. And it's, in that sense, it's an enormous
War is war.
sad story. And we have decided we're not going to do that. Not only that, is we're going to make no man's land a place for people and a safe place. And it's specifically for people who are wounded, and the gay community is specifically the wounded community here in many cases, finding ways for that to be safe.
There's
You know, the one thing I really appreciate about your story is, you know, how you built the bridge, right? You can burn the bridge or you can build the bridge. And you both definitely made the choice to move forward together and build that bridge. So what I'd like to ask you about now is, you know, going back to, you met for the first time, you met a couple more times, and you know, you brought people in, you know, E.T., you brought some queer friends in. James, you brought in some other pastors and people in your church. At what point did you decide that this needed to become a regular thing? And, you know, how many more bridges have you built there?
Well, I think that we have been meeting regularly since probably 2015 on a semi-regular basis. And then we went to a monthly meeting. We also did a huge community presentation in 2020, February of 2020. And we had 150 people attend it that wanted to talk about queerness and Christianity. So there obviously was an interest in doing it and people wanting to come out and talk about it and have that conversation. And we're going to do another one. We want to do another one of those because it was very successful. We had invited a speaker from Generous Spaces, which is a queer Christian online program that, and we were going to start a generous space group in Nanaimo. We were all ready to do it, and then COVID hit, and so we had nowhere to meet. The place we were going to meet didn't want people in the building at that point, and so it didn't really get off the ground. And then unfortunately, several months ago, Generous Spaces had some issues and are not presently a functioning organization. So, but we've continued our monthly meeting through the whole thing.
And I think that COVID has changed everything around unexpectedly. With the big meeting we had in February 2020 at our church was a pivotal piece. Almost immediately after that, COVID hit, and so everything has gone into suspended animation. But ET and I are determined to keep working at this project. And so now, because of COVID, with it hopefully receding, we can start to plan again, and we're going to go, more consistently, meeting monthly. And how do we expand the circle?
Okay.
And that's our challenge. And we haven't got a particular roadmap at this point, other than we know we're on the right track. And from both communities, there's deep suspicion. I meet lots of gay people who are happy to meet with me one-on-one, but come to be a group, they're very nervous.
And
well,
that's understandable.
The reality, it's easy to understand when you hear their stories.
Yes.
So how do you make safe places is the challenge.
Well, one thing I just wanted to add really quickly is the group that meets. We have parents that come, parents of trans and gay people, kids or adults now.
We call them kids because we're well in advance.
Yeah, they're kids to us. So,
you guys are kids to us.
Okay.
Right.
That's nice.
So we've had them come, we've had parents come, we've had queer people, we've had the ministers. They come on a fairly regular basis. And I recently posted on Vancouver Island Gay and Lesbian Rainbow Network, which is a Facebook page that my partner and I wrangle, or however you want to call it. And I got a couple of people that are interested in coming to the next group next week. So the interest is definitely there. There are so many people, as I'm sure you both know, that have been very injured by their experiences with different churches. Protestant and Catholic. And so
just churches in general.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I think James and I, our sort of mission is to try to have something available for people who miss Christianity in their life or miss having a church that they can go to, and just to have a place where they can be queer and Christian and talk to other people who are also. So that's kind of the focus of the group.
And how does one find out about this group? I think you mentioned you have some social media pages.
We do have a page on Facebook, and it's called the LGBTQ Evangelical Discussion Group.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it's a private group, but anyone can find it on Facebook, but then you have to message us to actually join the group, because we want it to be a safe place for people. So we want to make sure people's motives to wanting to join the group are good. So we talk about things online on there. We share resources, and then we also set up our group meetings. So again, that's LGBTQ Evangelical Discussion Group on Facebook. I also post about it semi-periodically on the other Facebook page I just mentioned. That's for anyone on Vancouver Island, and I think the Lower Mainland too, the Rainbow Network group.
So by and large, this group is made up of the queer community, people from the queer community, and the evangelical community.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a group that is morphing as it goes, because suddenly parents of gay kids are showing up. The gay activists find it easier. The average gay person who's working at it is still feels vulnerable. And so again, our project immediately is to really restart post-COVID.
I see.
You know, this is everything got put into suspended animation, but our mission has not changed. And as a matter of fact, it's grown and become more, I think, more specific in some ways, of being a neutral ground. And I like the picture of the no man's land on this topic. Join us there. We're setting up a home there and setting up a place there.
And we're not going to shoot each other the next day.
We're not. Exactly. So
it's
right.
all positive.
Yeah.
It's all
Yes.
been positive.
No, I think that's really wonderful. And thank you both so much for sharing your story and telling us about these groups. I understand there's a book in the works too.
Well, ET and I are working on a book, and it's called The Lesbian and the Pastor. And
Okay.
Walk into a bar.
and the
Walk into a grocery store.
Yes.
Yes. The paradigm is that of the Christmas truce of 1914, because to me, that's the picture of what we're doing. There is a war. We can talk more from the evangelical background. They specifically see it as a war. Many in the gay community see it as a war, and it's ongoing, and it's not okay.
So it's basically our story of everything we've been talking about here, only in much more detail, of more of our backgrounds, sort of a bio of each of us, and then how we met and what we've been doing for the last 6 years, 8 years, 6 years.
Yep.
And
Well, speaking of the background, I think we skipped over that, right? So, James, you're a retired evangelical pastor,
Yes.
Mennonite.
Yes, correct.
And then, E.T., you're a queer gay activist
yeah, and I've
from
been
the U.S.
I am, but I've lived here 15 years now. No, 16 years now. And I was on Vancouver Island Rainbow Association board, and then which then changed to Nanaimo Pride Society, and I was on that board for a while. So I've been been involved in the queer community here for since 2006, really. And activism is something that's dear to my heart, and always has been. I've probably been doing it since the 60s, really, without saying how old I am.
Well, it got me thinking.
I'm turning 70 in less than a month. So.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
Yeah.
Well, I'm turning 59 on Sunday. So there.
You go.
Well, enjoy it, because you know what comes next. You'll be in this
I know.
60s decade.
I think what comes next is the option to claim your CPP early.
There you are. Yep.
I already got a notice from my bank.
Yeah, there's got to be some payoff.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think I'll wait.
Yeah.
I can afford to wait for now.
There you go.
Well, I was just something just struck my mind while we were talking, E.T. You said you're an activist. Is there, in your mind, is there a difference between being an activist and an advocate, or is that the same thing to you?
I think if you're an activist, that you're really aware of the issues that affect the queer community, and you want to do something about it, and you're willing to do what you have to do. You know, whether it's marching or writing letters, or, you know, I got involved with this leader cast thing to try to stop it, and it was successful. So to me, activism implies action, doing something. Advocate, I think, is more, you advocate, you know, you're supportive of the queer community.
So that would be James's role then? You're the activist and James is the advocate?
James is an advocate, definitely.
I think in my community, I'm an activist.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's an activist in the Mennonite community for sure, and in the evangelical community. So we're kind of both activists, just slightly different in our focus.
Or
We
intensity.
have our team that we have to be mindful of.
Right.
And we're trying to get each of our teams to come to no man's land with us rather than staying in the war zone. And so that's a challenge. And
Okay.
And I
Okay,
just,
so we're all, yeah,
are we
go
out of
ahead,
time?
please. Yes, yeah, no, fine.
I was just going to say, I was raised as a Catholic and in a conservative Catholic family, and I was quite a devout little Catholic, and I loved the church, and I had to walk away from it. It was just too hurtful, the things that were said and done, and so I think I totally understand other people who have had to walk away from their church, and you do feel somewhat of an empty space there or whatever, but you feel like you can't be queer and Christian or queer and Catholic or whatever it is. And I think that you can be. And so
Well, I don't feel, but some people do.
some people do. And just some of the gay people that I know, they just feel totally rejected, totally hurt, and they feel like they have nowhere to go. But they still consider themselves a Christian. So I would like to try to undo as much of that as we can and have people have a safe space.
Well, with that said, what would your call to action be now? Like for all those who are listening and watching, what would your call to action be?
Well, I think if you're gay, that give this a try. Maybe try to meet with some other other people in the community that maybe you haven't met with before. Try to, if being with other Christian gay people is important to you, put yourself out there. Come to the group. Come to a big community meeting when we have another one. And I think that all gay people need to always have in mind that they have rights and they have freedoms, but they have to demand those, and they have to work
Certainly they
for
do.
them. Yeah.
And my counterpart that is, come and join us because we need you. We need ET and I are two people with two sets of gifts, which are ours, but we need the other people helping us because this is a big challenge and there's a whole lot of work to be done and we need help.
Yeah, thank you for, Scott said, building a bridge instead of a wall. There's so many walls already that have been put up. And so we have to, well, I guess it's a two-way, it's a two-part thing. We have to put down the walls and then build a bridge.
And each community has its responsibility, which is different. The responsibility of the church community is to recognize the hurt it's done. There's a truth and reconciliation process that's our job. And that's why I'm an activist with our community of we have to actively open doors. For wounded people, you can't expect them to now just pretend everything's okay.
Kind of have to prove that it's okay. Show that it's okay.
Okay. Oh, I guess that's it, Scott.
That's it. Absolutely. On that note, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you both so much for joining us today. Thanks for your story and your insights. And it was a real pleasure. And maybe we'll catch up with you in a few months and see where we're at now.
That would be great.
We'd love to do that.
Thanks for having us on your show.
There you have it, Pastor James Taves and LGBTQ activist E.T. Turner. Who would have thought that these two would be fighting the battle together?
Oh, no, exactly, especially once you hear it from E.T.'s perspective. And, really, I mean, I love the analogy, again, of the two generals on the battlefield. And they were both so firmly ensconced in their positions. And this against this background of this corporate leviathan that we have nothing but problems with in the U.S., Chick-fil-A. And now this beautiful friendship has come from this whole experience.
So there you have it. As long as we are here, we will continue to be the program that is a show about queer people, for queer people, by queer people, and our allies. We'll catch you next time on Queer View Mirror.
Good night.